Et je vais passer la parole à notre ami Yann Fermont, qui est avocat et qui va se présenter.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to greet you on behalf of the International Association of Democratic Lawyers. I'm the acting Secretary General of that organization. The Palestinian Bar Association is an affiliate to our organization, so we are familiar with the situation of Palestine, and all our national organizations have a long history of solidarity with the Palestinian people. So we're very happy to be one of the partners in the organizing of this, the partner organizations in the organizing of this conference. Second thing I would like to say is that I think there should be a law, a rule in international law that you cannot inflict upon a nice audience like you, two lawyers at 6 in the evening to speak about law, because that is not in accordance with human rights, I think. I'd like to make some remarks, but of course I will not go deeply into any legal analysis, because that is simply impossible at this time of the day within the framework of the time that is given to us. Three, it's difficult to speak at the very end because almost everything has been said by others, also including the legal aspects of the problem, so I will not go back into the illegality of the occupation, the illegality of the settlements, because these are so well documented, both during this conference by other speakers as in the literature on the available research work. And I think, anyhow, it's not necessary to explain to you that the settlements and the occupations are illegal. I would like to start with one small observation. I'm slightly worried by some evolution in the debate, the legal debate, but also the political debate that derives from it on Palestine. Actually, it became clear to me and to my organization, this unwanted evolution became clear during the Operation Cast Lead. When we were looking at the debate in the international human rights community, and in also even in some parts of the solidarity movement, we saw that there was a debate on how Israel was attacking the Palestinian people in Gaza. The debate was on whether they used white phosphor, yes or no. The debate was on whether there was excessive force, yes or no. And of course all these questions are extremely important, because it could be whether, depending on the answer you give to these questions, you conclude that war crimes have been committed, yes or no. But what was absent from the debate was the question of the illegality of the war. The fact that this was a war of aggression, and that however it was conducted, even if it was conducted with nice clean weapons, even if the only military targets were aimed by the Israeli forces, it was still an illegal war. It was an illegal war, it is an illegal occupation, it is an illegal blockade on Gaza, and it is an illegal enterprise of settlements in order to steal the Palestinian land from the Palestinian people. And I think we should put that again in the focus of the discussion, because whatever we do next depends on which very land. If we say that it's an illegal occupation, that it's an illegal settlement enterprise, that it is an apartheid regime, then there should be no discussion about the question whether sanctions on that regime, whether boycott of that regime, whether divestment of economic entities of companies from our countries in that country should be a call for that boycott, that divestment, and that sanction should be legal, yes or no. Because it's not at that time a matter of whether it's illegal, yes or no. It's a matter of obligation of the international community to hold Israel and the United States. So I think we really, and of course, that's why I'm very happy about the topic of this conference, because precisely it re-emphasizes the illegality of the occupation, the illegality of all the consequences of the occupation, and the illegality of the mechanisms used, and the settlements is one of those mechanisms of the mechanisms used by Israel to occupy the land of the Palestinian people. International law, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, and as we heard during the whole day, has very little enforcement mechanisms. International law has very little possibilities to, there's no international police that can go to a country and enforce international law. There are a few, of course. First of all, there are some international enforcement mechanisms that are foreseen, that have been foreseen in theory. I'm thinking about the Military Staff Committee that is foreseen by Article 47 of the UN Charter. But it's significant that even those mechanisms, the Military Staff Committee, which is actually a kind of leadership of the UN Army, of course conceived as a leadership of the UN Army that should intervene when the international law was under threat, it was never created. And not later than 1950, already the US was using, under the flag of the United Nations, was using its military force to attack Korea. So there are very little mechanisms. My colleague and friend Mohammed Yunus referred a few seconds ago to the International Criminal Court. And I think it has been a very important step that the state of Palestine has actually joined the International Criminal Court. Article 7G of the Rome Statute defines as a crime against humanity the crime of apartheid. And it's very obvious to me that the Israeli policies, the policies that are conducted by Israel, is a policy of apartheid, the policy of separation of the Palestinian people and discrimination, systematic discrimination of the Palestinian people. Article 7D of the Rome Statute defines as a war crime, as a crime against humanity, the deportation or the forcible transfer of population. And the whole day we heard about deportation and forcible transfer of population from Palestinian land. Every colony that is established implies a forcible displacement of Palestinian people. And so the International Criminal Court does offer some perspective there, and I think the Palestinian Authority was right to, Palestinian state was right to join the International Criminal Court. But we also know, or we should know, that these international judicial mechanisms are extremely politicized, and that it does take more than just a well-documented file on the desk of the prosecutor for the International Criminal Court and this kind of international mechanism to act. There is, of course, a possibility also to use universal jurisdiction laws in countries of Europe. That's a little bit a complicated matter, but all countries that signed the Geneva Conventions should establish jurisdiction over crimes committed, crimes against the obligations under the Geneva Conventions. I would like to remind you that even if the effect of this has been limited, it did have some effect. When some of my British colleagues heard that General Yalom and Tzipi Livni were going to London for a conference to defend the Israeli policies, they convinced a judge to issue an arrest warrant against both, and actually, of course, the British government warned them in the plane, and they flew back without arrest, of course. One couldn't expect anything else, but at least they were not able, to be there and to make their statements and to deceive the people on the nature of their policies. And so, yes, there are some mechanisms available. And I think we should all work together to try to use to the maximum these mechanisms. And I very frankly think that they are, at this point, still underestimated. I know that the Palestinian Authority prepared some files for the International Criminal Court, and I'm quite sure, because I know some of the people who are involved in this, that this work has been done very seriously. But I think also Palestinian refugees could go to the International Criminal Court. Organizations could go to the International Criminal Court, submit additional files, support the applications made by the Palestinian state, and I think that would help the prosecutor to decide on the admissibility of these complaints. So yes, we have to use those methods. A more difficult matter, and I want to essentially use the few minutes that are left to speak on this subject. A more difficult matter is, of course, how can we hold our states accountable for their position? How can we in Western Europe, people in the United States, can hold their states accountable for a policy that is clearly paying lip service to international law? And of course, it's important to have Resolution 2334 recognizing the illegal nature of the occupation and the settlements. But at the same time, what is needed is that it's not just words, that it's not just a resolution, that this becomes policy. Now, what I would like to say there is that there is, some of my Palestinian friends made an excellent study which I recommend you all to read. And I'm not going to read it out to you because it's 35 pages. But it's published on the website of a Palestinian legal organization called Al-Haq. And it's a study about the settlements, the settlement enterprise. But actually it goes beyond. It analyzes the combined action of the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on the wall, which recognized the illegality not only of the wall, but also of the settlement, of the occupation, of the settlement enterprise, because the court analyzes the wall as part of a policy and not just as an isolated fact, and decided in its advisory opinion, or at least took the stand in its advisory opinion, that the whole enterprise was an illegal enterprise, not only the wall as such. But the combined action of that decision, or that opinion of 2004, and another document of the United Nations, which is the rules on the responsibility of states for internationally wrongful acts, a document that was produced by the International Law Commission, which is the highest body that codifies international law on behalf of the United Nations. These two documents combined show very clearly that there is a responsibility on all states of the international community, not only to condemn, but to act effectively upon these illegalities. The study, which I mentioned earlier, and I think it's really, it's some of the best I've read about this question, says very clearly that under these two combined international legal documents, the ruling of the court and these articles on state responsibility, there is a responsibility upon all states to cooperate, to bring to an end Israel's serious breaches, and to act separately or jointly to counteract the effect of the breaches of international law committed by Israel. So it's not just a matter of voting a resolution. Voting as a resolution is a very small form of action. It's bring the violations to an end by effective action. And of course, not to recognize, that is to give legal sanctions to the illegal situation created by Israel, nor to render aid or assistance in maintaining that situation. That are the obligations on every country of the international community. And the obligation not to give legal sanctions implies both the formal recognition of the actions undertaken by the State of Israel as acts implying such implicitly recognized. international law, our states, our countries should be reminded that if they don't act in this way, if they don't act according to these obligations, they themselves incur liability for internationally wrongful acts. And I think we should explore, and I will end with this because further detail would lead us too far. I think we should explore with the solidarity movement and with legal organizations the possibilities to hold in our national courts, our national authorities, liable on these obligations. And I would like to give you one example of the possibilities that might exist there. Some activists launched a case in Holland and in Belgium against their own governments, saying that their own governments did not enough to respect the obligations related to climate change. The Dutch lawyer, the Dutch judge, actually did decide that the government did not enough to respect its international obligations on climate change and imposed measures upon the government. And I think we should think in this kind of line. BDS, of course, I'm in full support of BDS, but BDS should, as it has been with the sanctions and the boycott against the apartheid regime, BDS should at some point result in the fact that states take over, that states are forced to take over, that states are forced to take over the boycott and the isolation of a criminal regime in order to comply with their obligation to put an end to the breaches of international law that are committed by Israel. And so I call upon you, I call upon all of us together to try to think in a creative way on how we can take it from the boycott and the sanctions imposed by citizens who do abide by their obligations under international law, because it's not an obligation only on states, it's an obligation on all of us. The citizens who organize BDS, they abide by their obligations under international law to try to take effective action to stop the violations. We should think all together how we can take it from there to the higher level, where we impose upon states to follow their citizens and to stop acting illegally by actually supporting or at least tolerating these violations of international law for such a long period. Thank you very much.